Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to share our project, Predicting Student Performance in Portuguese Secondary Schools. We focuses on understanding which factors influence students' final grades. Our team, Sean, Deepika, and myself collaborated across data preprocessing, data analysis, and model evaluation. My name is Hyunju Yu, and I will be explaining the steps we took in data preprocessing and our exploratory data analysis. We use the data set from two Portuguese secondary schools that includes information from 649 students with 33 pieces of information, like students' age, study time, family background, their first, second, and final grades. The goal of this project was to evaluate how those various pieces of information influence students' final grades and identify which predictive model best captures these relationships. To begin our analysis, first, we needed to make sure our data was clean and ready through data preprocessing. We started by reviewing the data to make sure nothing important was missing that could impact our results. We then converted the data into a format the model could interpret consistently to standardize the data so it was reliable and ready for meaningful analysis. Then we moved on to our exploratory data analysis to find trends, patterns, and relationships that help us understand what might influence students' final grades. We used visual charts and plots to make the data easier to interpret and identify patterns. We confirmed that some outliers needed to be removed. For example, any unusual entries that didn't represent typical cases. As you can see in the plot, some students have 0 scores. And in the next plot, the results showed a very strong positive relationship, meaning students who did well earlier in the course tended to also score higher in their final grade. This suggests that early performance is a strong indicator of overall success. These findings helped us understand which factors were most important before moving into modeling analysis. So next, pass you over to Deepika, who will explain how we explore correlation and inferential statistics to dive deeper into those relationships.
Thank you, Jamie. So building on Jamie's point, we first started by mapping out correlation. Early grade G1 and G2 showed the strongest link with the final performance. That means the student early progress is the clearest window into their future academic success. We also saw an interesting alignment with parental educational level that were highly correlated. And lifestyle factors like weekday and weekend alcohol drinking habits went hand in hand. And students with the past failure consistently earned lower final grades. And overall, most of the collected features had weak but independent effect and provided unique information to the data. Next, we ranked each predictor by how strongly it's related to the final grade. An student who aimed for higher education attended certain schools, lived in urban areas, and had internet access at home tended to perform better. Whereas the predictors like gender, romantic relationships, and extra educational support showed weaker effect. This information is important as it helps schools to focus on their effort on where it actually matters most, such as nurturing aspiration, providing motivation, and learning access. Next, we then tested which of these patterns were statistically significant. We found that student aiming for higher education consistently outperformed peers. As expected, pure past failure and consistent study habits drove result, and parental education, especially mother education, had meaningful influence on their child academic success. And one surprising insight was student receiving the extra educational study school support scores slightly lower, that which doesn't mean the extra support is ineffective, but this support may simply need to be better refined and tailored according to the student's individual needs. And some social factors like drinking, romantic relationships were linked to the lower grade. Key takeaways from my section is that student performance is both predictable and improvable. Correlation is not causation, but it is a compass that points us where to act. With this insight, school and communities can intervene earlier uh, struggling students by customizing their support programs, promoting college aspiration early on, and strengthening access by having urban infrastructure and internet use at home. Next, over to Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean McGowan. Thank you for being here. Let's go straight to what the data shows and what it means for decision making. So we tested several approaches here, 5 different models, as you can see, ranging from simple linear models to machine learning models like random forest. And the big surprise, they all performed almost the same. Our best model reached an R-squared of 0.90. What that means is 90% of the variation in the final grade G3 can be explained using the predictors in the model. And that tells us something important. It tells us the key drivers behind student performance aren't hidden or complex. They're clear and consistent. And when we include early term grades in these models, that's G1 and G2, especially the second term grade, we can already explain about 90% of final outcomes. The first term grade and attendance matter too, just not as strongly. So if the goal is forecasting here, you don't need to do anything complicated. Just track those 2 grades, G1 and G2, and attendance, and you'll have a very accurate picture of what's going on. There's a challenge here though. By the time those grades show up, it may already be too late to change trajectory. So we pushed the analysis a little further. We asked the question, what signals show up early before grades even exist? And when we removed those 2 midterm grades, G1 and G2, the accuracy of the model dropped as we expected, but a new pattern appeared clearly. The strongest early warning sign after G1 and G2 were removed was a history of past failure. Next came motivation, which is whether a student planned to continue education or not. And attendance we found still mattered. Now, not only as a behavior signal, now it emerges as a behavioral signal and not just an academic one. So here's the key message here. Grades help us predict, failure history and motivation help us intervene. That means the moment a student has a past failure on record, support shouldn't be optional, it should be automatic. Tutoring, mentoring, and check-ins are where an early investment delivers the highest return. And when a student expresses a goal, even something like when they say, I want to go on to higher education, that isn't just a survey response, it's a predictive signal. So reinforcing that belief through mentorship or exposure isn't just motivational, it's strategic. So just a final recap here. If you want accurate forecasting, track early grades and attendance. And if you want to change outcomes, act early on past failures and motivation signals. Grades tell us where students are, and failure history and motivation tell us where we still have a chance to change direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So